Hello and welcome to another edition of your Rehab Power Hour. This is your community to engage in virtual rehab together in a place to discuss things all neuro rehab, from the science, the people behind it, and the individual journeys of recovery. I'm your host, David Wu. I'm the CEO and founder of Motus Nova, and our mission at Motus Nova is to use technology to make sure that no brain injury goes untreated. As always, we welcome anyone recovering from neurological injury, their friends, care partners, and families and clinicians to join us live, have the opportunity to engage in conversation. I already see we've got some folks here in the chat. Hello, Heather. Hello, Ian. Welcome. Great to see everyone. Hello, Mark and Stacy. Many of our familiar faces, and I'm hoping to see some new ones as well. Tonight we've actually kind of a special segment. We're going to do some in-depth interviews with some stroke survivors, both Ella and Jerry, and we're going to have them talk a little bit about their journey through having their injury, their brain injury, and also their journeys of recovery. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them here in the chat, you can email your questions as well to rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com. Or call our phone line, leave a voicemail, and we'll be able to actually play that live on the air. And that phone number is 404-594-4244. If you find any of this helpful, please hit like, share with your friends, and join our support group. It really helps us get the word out. So as we get started here, if you have a home exercise program or you have your rehab ready, we'd love for you to start that. And spend this hour with us doing your rehab. If you have the hand mentor or foot mentor, you'll be able to join a live session with us here as well. And we want everyone to encourage everyone to do as many hours of rehabs as possible. As we all know, more rehab leads to more recovery. Very good. So I want to first introduce here our first guest. This is going to be Ella. Ella, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Ella. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. And yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Ella's, you're joining us from?
From just outside Toronto. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, which is in Canada.
Very cool. Very cool. And we've got an international show tonight. Very good. And also we have with us Jerry. Jerry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good to see everybody.
Hi, Jerry. And Jerry, where are you joining us from?
I'm from Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Very good. And I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're both kind of in as the weather's warming up down here. I think we hit 70s outside this today. It's 70 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what is that in centigrade for our Canadian neighbors
Celsius,
here.
I don't know. I think it's probably 20, I don't know, 20.
I'd guess 20. We'll say it's about 20 degrees centigrade. Very good. And the sun was shining, so today was a great day.
Terrific.
Very good. Okay, so Ella, maybe if we can start with you, and we'll start let's see. Let's start with Ella. Ella, please. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your brain injury. Tell us when did that, when did your journey initially start?
Yes. So I had a brain injury as a result of an AVM rupture, arteriovenous malformation rupture, and that was in my cerebellum. So it caused a hemorrhagic stroke. I was 14 years old when it happened. I was 2008, January 2008. And when it ruptured, we didn't know it was there. And so it ended up rupturing. I had a headache. I actually ended up fainting in my 5th period, grade 9 drama class. And then I was taken to the hospital, and that's how they found the bleed. Yeah.
And an AVM, that's, oftentimes a congenital malformation, the arteriovenous malformation. Many people that have AVMs aren't aware that they have them. Sometimes it can be caught in a scan, oftentimes a scan looking at the brain for some other reason. and sometimes some people live their lives and they'll never know that it was there, and it may not burst. But of course, in your case, unfortunately, when you were 14, and how many years ago, can you kind of give us a time frame?
Yeah, so that was just over 14 years ago. It happened January 10th, 2008. Yeah, so just this past January would have been the 13-year mark.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. So right after, immediately following your injury, if you can kind of bring us back to that time, what when you woke up, what was that like, and what could you do, and what maybe couldn't you do?
Yeah, great question. So when it happened, so I passed out. I wasn't breathing, so they had to put in the breathing tube, and they rushed me to the hospital. They found the bleed. They originally went in through the artery in the groin to stop the bleeding. So I was comatose for about 6 days, and then when I woke up, it's funny, I have two sort of memories of when I woke up. The first one was one of those in and out memories where like you wake up and then you feel like you go back to sleep. And I swear I was eating macaroni and cheese, but that's all I remember. And then when I woke up, sort of like the real time, or like the official time where I felt like I was really with it. My first thought was, oh my gosh, Mom, did you hand in my English homework? Because I was so concerned about my English mark in grade 9. Unfortunately, she didn't. So that was unfortunate. But when I did wake up, as far as physical deficits, I had my left side affected. Not to say I didn't have paralysis, but I didn't have a lot of strength on the left. So I was in a walker for about 3 months. My short-term memory was bad, like Dory Finding Nemo bad is the best way I can describe it.
So maybe some interesting episodes in the hospital there where maybe it was hard to have a conversation, or hard to interact with your family while having some short-term memory loss.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's funny, I think about it in hindsight now, because at the time when you have short-term memory loss, you don't know you have short-term memory loss. And so that's really one of the biggest challenges, is you don't realize you're repeating yourself. And I just think back to how much patience my family and my friends, being that I was, again, only 14 and in high school, how much patience all these people had with me. It must have been pretty difficult to have a conversation with.
Absolutely. And so you said you had some deficits, physical deficits as well, weakness, I think you said, on your left side. And are you right-handed or left-handed?
So I am a right-handed, so I was quite thankful for that. I think like there are small things that I still notice now. It definitely doesn't impede me in daily life, which I'm very thankful for. I just have to be a little bit more intentional about certain things that I do all the time, such as talking, because a lot of my speech was affected greatly.
Well, it seems like, I think we'll talk about that. But you were able to hopefully do some rehab while you were in the hospital, while you were inpatient. Tell us a little bit about that. Did you? I think they in Canada they call it physio. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that, and how much physio did you had? Maybe some interesting perspectives from a different healthcare system.
Yeah. Okay. So that's funny. First of all, that somebody else had mentioned to me they call it physio in Canada. I just thought it was like a worldwide or like an English speaking thing. Guess not.
I think I've also heard in the UK they'll call it physio or physiotherapy.
Okay.
And I've heard in a few places, but we in the States here we call it physical therapy. And in some cases occupational therapy, depending on the focus. But we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about rehab.
Yeah, definitely. So I was actually only in the hospital for 2 weeks on the dot, which is pretty not as long as a lot of people spend in hospital. Keeping in mind, I was only 14, and I was a healthy athlete, so that was very helpful. I remember vaguely remember some of the first times trying to use my walker in the hospital just to like go for a walk around. And I remember my mom telling me years later, how tired I was just to like stand up, and then eventually just to walk a couple steps, like, okay, like I'm done, I couldn't do it anymore. As far as outpatient therapy, I did do physical therapy.
No,
I
yeah,
believe
yeah.
a couple times a week, probably for about not even 6 months, maybe
Okay.
like much less than that.
Okay. And
Yeah,
how long was each of those sessions? A couple of times a week?
Maybe like 1 to 2 hours, I want to guess.
Okay.
I did not
Okay.
enjoy it at all. It's very stubborn.
Well, that's and that maybe is a common thread between physio and physical therapy, even in Canada. I think, and to the credit of the clinicians, you know, they try to push you. That's what it is, right? If physical therapy or physiotherapy was fun and a bunch of just fun and games, then no pain, no gain, right? That's the kind of saying. Maybe they're going too easy on you, and kind of a lot of clinicians, they're trained to kind of go as far as possible and know where the limits are as well. It's kind of, you know, being in the hands of a good coach as well. So hopefully, you know, you had a good experience, even though if sometimes some of it was painful or some of it was very tiring.
That's actually a good point that you made about they want to push you to your limit. And, you know, at the time, I'm sure I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know myself and a few people that I've talked to were in this sort of denial phase where like, I'm fine, I can run. And it's like, well, no, you actually can't. We have to go a little bit slower. But again, I was 14, I was an athlete, and maybe I did have a little bit of that extra confidence where I thought I could do things I couldn't. But I wish I was pushed maybe a little bit harder at the time. You know, hindsight's 2020, and it's been so long. But yeah, for what it was, it worked out for me in the end.
Very good, very good. And yes, so it sounds like you had a similar experience in outpatient, 2 or 3 times a week, something like an hour or two. It sounds like oftentimes in the States here, it's 2 or 3 times a week in outpatient rehab. And typically it's an hour, but depending on, sometimes you can have both physical therapy, PT, and OT, occupational therapy. And that can be in terms of working on the upper extremity, the hands, the arm, and the fingers, and then the lower extremities, the foot, the leg. Those can add up to 1 or 2 hours a day. So that sounds like it matches pretty well. So 6 months of rehab, that's quite some time.
Probably,
you know, congrats
less.
to you.
I have to say now, I have to cut you off right there, because I was thinking about it. I'm like, I'm sure it was much less, just to save my face a little bit there.
No, it's great to hear that you made a lot of progress. You were very young, and kind of, you know, we know that younger brains tend to be able to create new connections more easily. And, you know, we see this in language formation. Young kids can learn a new language very, very quickly. And certainly, you know, that's not to say as we get older, we can't learn any new things, right? If you put your mind to it and you put in the hours and the practice, we can always learn. We can always rewire the brain. And to your credit, though, you know, having a brain injury at such a young age, certainly there's some advantages in having that youth, in being able to create those connections. And maybe you were able to see some of those gains a little bit quicker than maybe some other stroke survivors that may have experienced. So yeah, so I'm happy to hear. So how are things today? What are your do you have that was about, I think we said 2008, a little more than 10 years ago. How are you today in terms of your rehab and your recovery?
In terms of things today, really, I don't have any significant things that impede me from reaching my daily goals or work or anything. There are things that I've noticed, I think mostly cognitively. So my bleed was in my cerebellum. Sometimes it's difficult to coordinate thoughts. That was a really big thing I noticed going back to school. Anything that's instructions, it takes me a long time to go, okay, this comes first, then this, and then keep that as a working memory to do it over and over. It's a little bit more difficult, but again, it's been so long, I think I'm fairly adjusted. I was speaking to somebody who popped on here for like the second time. Jacob Wynn, it's very nice to see you here. You were chatting, and I was telling him, it's like my things that I have to adapt to are part of my life. So imagine you're going to your friend's house for the first time, and it's the very first time you've been there, you have to walk through the park, and you're going along the path, and there's this big pile of dirt in front of you. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is a huge challenge. What do I do? So you try to like shovel your way through it, crawling, like moving dirt aside. It's a huge, huge challenge, but that's the only path you can take. Now, I've been walking that path for 13 plus years now. And so I've learned to expect that challenge to be there. So I just start showing up with a shovel. And so I just see the challenges as part of my life.
Yeah, no, that's certainly very inspirational. And I think that, you know, rehab, any large kind of difficult task, of course, rehab from stroke, recovery from stroke, certainly being one of them. You know, you can't, it can be daunting. It's difficult to think of as a single thing to complete. But, you know, any big task can be broken down into individual steps. And sometimes it's easier to think about, you know, what do I have to do next to achieve my goals? Because, you know, as you lay those steps one after another, we can all reach incredible things. And certainly hearing, you know, your story of as you continue to do rehab, even you know, in these years, you still have some deficits that you continue to work on. It's incredible and inspiring to see that your you know, your recovery journey so far. So tell us a little bit about, were you able to kind of, I think that you had mentioned that you had gone back to school, but maybe you were, did you have any deficits when you were able to go back to school?
Yeah, so that was a whole other challenge on its own. So I went back to school in a walker. I was in a walker for about 3 months. Also with the reduced course load, with a little bit of the speech impediment that I didn't really pick up on, as well as the bit of short-term memory that I didn't pick up on. And so yes, I imagine it was really difficult to have conversations with friends. I went through, anybody can just imagine being in high school is hard enough. I think, you know, trying to be cool or like just have friends, period. And so having all those deficits on top of just being in high school and going through those challenges was difficult. It was difficult. There was lunch periods where I had nobody to sit with because no one wanted to hang out with me, and like time that I spent in the library trying to sneak in my lunch and then getting in trouble eating there, but it was actually because I had nobody to sit with. And yeah, so I went through a lot of challenges that way for sure. That was it. But I learned the importance, I think, of friendship, and I did have a lot of people who really stuck with me through those times, and I'm very grateful for them.
That's great to hear. I know I know that high school can be a challenging time for any of us, and certainly it sounds like having something that singled you out I can only imagine make it so much more difficult. But as you said, having caregivers so important to anybody's recovery journey, getting through any difficulty, especially something like stroke rehab. And you know, I think that's something that very much we don't recognize enough in the community, in the neuro rehab community, the stroke community. You know, we certainly have a lot of focus on helping stroke survivors and getting them better. And you know, very much so, it's inspiring to see all the gains that are made. But there are also the unsung heroes, the caregivers, the spouses, the son, the daughter, the brother, the sister, the parents that are kind of the support structure, the foundation for for the stroke survivor as they're getting better. And I just give a shout out to all of the caregivers that are with us today that are listening in. What you do is so important in keeping keeping things going, keeping things positive, all that support. It really does a lot. And I think that in many ways you don't get enough credit for all the work that you put in. Certainly no one asks to have a stroke. And as a caregiver, of course, you're in a similar vein. You don't want to be put into a caregiver situation either. But of course, all your support. I think that's one of the biggest things is you can't walk away from a stroke. You have a stroke, and that's something that you have. But for the caregivers that are out there, it's something that they opt into. They opt into being that caregiver for the stroke survivor, for anyone with a neurological injury. And I think that in itself is so inspiring, and the dedication that caregivers put in. So I'll get off my soapbox here, but we certainly appreciate everything that our caregivers give, and we want to just give a little bit of recognition for that.
Definitely. Thank all caregivers.
No, absolutely. Okay, so maybe I think one issue that maybe you wanted to talk about, Ella, was kind of we talk a lot about the physical after a stroke, the physical deficits, the physical impairments. But for you, of course, you had those physical impairments that made it difficult for you, and it's something that you had to overcome with rehab. And now, talk to us about some of the psychological kind of burdens that have resulted from stroke.
Yeah. So, you can see the physical things. And for me, I was so lucky to be able to rehabilitate physically so quickly, and seem to be, still doing well in school as far as my marks were, not as well as they used to be, but like I seemed fine from just looking at me. But I felt all these differences in the way I operated and the way I thought. One of them being coordinating my thoughts, instructions. I used to be a big math person. I wanted to go to school for math. I just could think so quickly, and then all of a sudden I just couldn't do it as quick anymore. And so I actually remember seeing a neuropsychologist one time. I was like the standard, here are all the people that you go see. And I saw this guy one time. We did some basic tests, of course, that I barely remember now. And he was like, yep, you're good. And,
Okay.
maybe compared to a lot of people, I'm sure I was. But I still felt differences. And something that I think we talked about offline was sometimes it doesn't matter, how much or how little you are different compared to other people, because what matters to me is just the fact that I'm different. End of sentence. I'm different than the person I used to be. So all those changes, I just really repressed my feelings and all these things that I noticed over time, especially because I didn't have a professional validating them, to the point where I just hit my rock bottom sort of 10 years later, and kind of all these things came out of me, and I just I needed help, and I ended up finding it in a psychologist. And I work through the sort of mental rehab side, as I like to call it, to manage my feelings and emotions much better.
Yeah. And certainly, like you said, a lot of the physical impacts of a stroke we can measure, and that leads to, in many ways, to treatment. And of course, as with today, we are better understanding some of the mental health that comes with major injuries, major life events, stroke certainly being one of them. And as we know, personalities can completely change following a brain injury. You can have someone that was very serious and quiet, turn very talkative, and very kind of almost casual or maybe laughing or crying in inappropriate times. And it can be really difficult. And people have an identity that they're accustomed to, someone they identify as themselves. But then it sometimes can feel, for some stroke survivors, it can feel like they've been put into somebody else, that they're not the person that they knew. And that in itself, I can only imagine can be so disheartening and difficult to get through, kind of dealing with how, who is the real you, who are you now, and what does that mean? And certainly I think that, like you had mentioned, going and being able to talk to someone, and also many times being able to have an open conversation about it to others that might be going through a similar thing, that can be cathartic and positive for a lot of people. So no, absolutely appreciate you kind of sharing some of your struggles and difficulties with that as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And certainly, we hope to, there's so many things that we don't know about the brain. And I think we were having this conversation. I was having this conversation earlier today with another stroke survivor. But we do these things about with rehab. We kind of do these treatments, and often I should say, especially with things with the brain, you can ask a neurologist, you can ask a neurosurgeon. They'll readily admit that we really don't understand the function of the brain well enough to know exactly why something worked or didn't work. And you hear this all the time, right? Every stroke is different. Everybody recovers differently from a stroke. And why? But why is that? Why is that? It's so frustrating. Can you please just tell me if I'm going to get better? We can't really do that in science, because we, in many ways, don't know exactly why some treatments work very well for some strokes, some people, some individuals, some brains. And it sounds like in your case, you made a lot of significant gains fairly quickly. And we know trends, right? We talked about being younger, youth having perhaps something to do with it, but we really don't know exactly why. And that, I think, can be frustrating in many ways, because we don't fully understand. We can't really say. And I think that's also partially why, as part of Motus, part of our mission is to help answer some of these questions, as we're kind of learning more about how people recover, and we see their recovery journeys, and all this data is being kind of taken in. We can better explain or better predict what types of rehab may be better for which types of individuals, whether that's high intensity or longer endurance, all of those kinds of data factors. But so, yeah, certainly, I think that we're a little bit of a tangent here, maybe an unplanned tangent. I'm talking about the data and the kind of the causes behind neurological rehab, and why it's so hard to predict exactly what's going on. But yeah, we have so much to know about the brain, and that we see the negatives of that being difficult to predict. But the positives of that is that there's so much more to learn. And if we can learn more, that means we're going to be able to help more people better and faster. So, on the bright side of not knowing, we can increase our knowledge, and we can find even better, more effective therapies and cures to neurological injury. And so maybe that's the bright side of where we are today in the science. So very good. I noticed that we've got some others joining in. Hello, Toma, I think it is. Hello, Toma. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Dawn from Phoenix. Always great to see you. Hello, Jacob. Welcome again. And we've got Dan from Huntsville. Hello, Dan. Great to see you, Dan. Hope everything is going well. And appreciate you joining us tonight for Rehab Power Hour. Very good. So I will remind everyone if you have a question, please feel free to post it here in the comments. We'll try to address them. And you can always call us at 404-594-4244 to ask a question live on the air, or email us at rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com. And hopefully we'll be able to kind of do our best in answering your questions about stroke, about neuroscience, or anything that you're interested in. So I'm going to go next here to a consult that we, to a consult. Juliette, can you hear me? Maybe we have Juliette here on the line. You might be muted, Juliette. We can't hear you if, Juliette, can you hear me? All right, we're going to try to get Juliette back. Oh.
Hello?
Hello, Juliette. How are you tonight?
I am doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good.
I understand that. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what we can help you with.
I am Juliette, as you all know, and I'm a caregiver. So I'm actually gonna talk about my son.
Okay.
And he's the one that this happened in 2013, June 19. He went to a camp playing basketball. He was 15 going on 16, and he collapsed on the field and went to cardiac arrest.
Wow.
And he went to coma for about 2 months, and he came back with a brain injury. And he was in rehab for about 3 months. And after that, he came back home, and he lives with me, and I have been a caregiver since then.
Yeah.
So right now he's 23. Yeah.
Okay. Well, first off, Juliette, thank you for so much for, we talked about caregivers earlier in the show. Thank you so much for what you do. I think that caregivers don't get enough credit. Thank you so much for every day getting up and playing such an important role for your son. I'm sure he appreciates you, and hopefully we can give you that recognition that you deserve, and all the work that you put in as well. And I'm sorry to hear that your son. So I didn't quite catch his name.
His name is Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
So Emmanuel had an injury, I think, in 2019 and
2013.
2013. Excuse me. Apologies. I didn't quite catch it. In 2013, and had a cardiac arrest, and then had a brain injury following his coma. So, what are his deficits like? Physical movements like today? And
he had a tracheotomy.
Okay.
And I don't know, due to that, he's not verbal.
Yeah.
Muscle weakness. He's in a wheelchair. He's wheelchair bound. He's been having everyday spasms a lot. So they gave him something, they call it a baclofen pump. At the beginning, it was very, very hard because he wasn't comfortable at all. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, the baclofen pump had done a lot. It was good for him, but it got to a point that when they were struggling, kind of like do a refill, because he was going to the hospital like every 6 weeks to refill this pump. But it got to a point this pump was kind of disappearing under his skin, because they said the size that they put it in was very small. So they decided to put a bigger one in. So that's when I told them to hold on, and I asked them that, is this pump, is it still effective like how it was effective at the beginning? And they couldn't answer. you know, my question. So they did kind of like, okay, let's see if it's effective, but it has to be like a process. So they put him through that process for like reducing the dose, and it took about 8 months for them to finish, you know, for him to go through this process, and then they found out that the pump wasn't even effective anymore. So they decided to take it out, which they did, to stop it, which they did, and they were looking for all kinds of signs for, you know, like we go to withdrawal or any kind of big, you know, thing that nothing happened.
Yeah. So baclofen pump often used for muscle spasticity as a muscle relaxant. Maybe he had some spasticity, or maybe you know, some muscle spasms and those kinds of things. At the beginning, and hopefully it sounds like that some of those we were able to work through some of those issues today. Now, were you looking at maybe which are we looking at, the upper extremity or lower extremity? Kind of help me with that.
It's pretty much the left side.
Okay, the whole left side.
Right now, it's the whole left side, his left arm. I mean, he can like extend it, but for some reason, he's always holding it to his body. And then the left leg is not, it can't touch. I mean, he's not letting it touch the floor. But I don't know that the left leg is from the foot drop that he had, because he had a very bad foot drop, and they even did a surgery on that left foot.
And
some kind of screws in there, but it's still not, you know, it didn't work. So the left side is the problem. Yes.
How does he have? Does Emmanuel have movement? Can he?
He moves. I mean, he can't even cross his legs in the chair.
Okay.
So,
is he able to lift his toes up towards the ceiling?
Yes, he can do that. When he's in his bed, he can lift it up. I mean, I don't know. He does, when he's sitting in the chair, he looks like he can walk, but when you get him to stand, it's a different story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's great that he has some movement, right? That's important as well. In many ways, that to me, it says that the connections are still there, that you know, we're able to send the signal from the brain all the way down to the foot. And I didn't exactly catch if, you know, there's a lot of ways that he can be moving his foot, but you know, any movement, that's great to hear. It means the connections are still there. Now, there could be some mix up in the signals crossing. It could be, you know, something with there not being enough strength in the signal getting through. So there's weakness in the movement. That's a lot of what I think Ella had as well, kind of following her injury, her stroke, with weakness in walking. And certainly doing rehab, having that practice, that repetitive practice, that's often the way we can retrain our brain to strengthen those signals, and also to send the meaningful signals, the signals that we intend to send to the right muscles to do the motions that move in ways that we want to move, and then kind of chain that into kind of functional tasks. So it sounds like to me, certainly, you know, that rehab would be something that can help Emmanuel get back some of his movement and some of his function. And certainly, you know, as we know in our healthcare system, as many of our users, our stroke survivors have gone through, you don't get enough rehab. We're saddled with something like 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. The science shows that you need hundreds of hours to create that neuroplasticity and to rewire the brain. And at 2 hours a week, I mean, it's going to take years to get to those hundreds of hours. And that's no one can wait that long. Kind of a lot of what we try to do is to speed up that process. It's the same rehab. There's nothing magical or different about the rehab that that you might be able to do on the hand mentor or foot mentor, but it's the fact that you can do that guided rehab for not just 2 hours a day. 2 hours a week. You can do it 2 hours a day. And sometimes even more. So I know that some of our power users are reaching into the 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and that's really the most simple explanation of why our users see kind of those gains much faster. There's no secret, there's no magic behind it. It's the same rehab, but just doing it more and faster just leads to that recovery. So hopefully that kind of gives you some insight into how we what some of the technology and what we work with. Did you have any other questions, Juliette, that I can help answer?
Right now, nothing. I mean, I have been through a lot, and I have asked a lot of questions, but you said the rehab part is what he needs. But the insurance, you know how they work. We have diving, they put him on, he goes for 6 weeks, and then they put him on hold, let's evaluate him. And then the problem, I think the biggest problem too is his size. He's a big guy. Maybe it's like 6'5".
Yeah.
He's very big. So when he goes, very tall. And if you send like a 5 foot a lady to work on him, it's not fun. I have watched them struggle with him, and how can he benefit on anything?
Well, physical therapists, that's what they sign up for, right? They got to be ready, or you can't just say, oh no, I'm going to only have patients that are this size. As physical therapists, they should be ready for that. So don't apologize for him being 6'5". That's something that that's on the physical therapist, and they'll figure out a way. So hopefully, actually, so we have one of our users here, Jerry, that has a current hand mentor, and maybe if you have any questions as we kind of walk through his experience, you could kind of jump back on and join the conversation and ask if any questions arise. So very, very good. Jerry, are you can you hear me, Jerry?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Awesome. I can hear you great. Well, thank you for joining us, Jerry. And tell us a little bit about you're calling in from Texas. Tell us a little bit about your injury and kind of your experience.
Yeah, certainly. I had my stroke October 19th, 2010. It was a hemorrhagic stroke. And first of all, I didn't know what a stroke was. I walked in the bedroom and stopped. And kind of a weird feeling that I didn't know what a stroke was, and I didn't know why I couldn't move. And one thing led to another, and ended up in the ICU for about 9 days, and didn't wake up, obviously, till the 9th day, 10th day, and ended up to rehab. Couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. I just was so confused. And when I woke up in ICU, the first person I saw was one of my daughters. And I started crying. It's kind of a crazy feeling. But I ended up in the hospital for about 2.5 months or so. When I left the hospital, I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. It was still the same thing. But then I went to outpatient therapy for about 8 years. Since COVID, I stopped. But I went for about 6 months out of the year that I went.
So you did consistent outpatient rehab for 8 years. For the past 8 years, you've always gone to rehab, every year. And COVID's the only thing that stopped you. Is that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah, I didn't stop. I was very determined not to just let stroke define me. I was very determined. I worked hard at it. I mean, there was points when, you know, the tone in the arm is just, it's still as bad, but I still work really hard, and my therapist would not let me down with it. So I ended up, I mean, tears were coming down my eyes, but they were pushing me, and I knew I needed that. So yeah, it was tough. Therapy, you know, I always say stroke is not for the weak.
No, absolutely. And stroke really challenges, I think, the best in us, both us and of course our families and our caregivers as well. So very good, Jerry. And so tell us a little bit about when did you start using adding the hand mentor into your stroke regimen, your stroke rehab, and kind of walk us, tell us a little about I'm curious as to hear kind of what differences you might have seen using the hand mentor.
Yes, when I first used the hand mentor, you know, having a stroke, your short-term memory, you know, gets all rattled up here, but it's about 4-5 months, and I couldn't do a lot. I mean, I have to lift my arm up here, but if anybody can see, I mean, I really didn't have any movement. But since at least 5 months since I've been using it, and trust me, I work hard at this. So if you can see, I'm getting some flexion and
that's great.
Well, yeah. So I'm even though my fingers are still, I have to really work hard to get it up. But if you can see, it really does. I mean, this hand mentor here. Absolutely. I don't want to make a mess here, but this hand mentor, I suggest this to anybody, even if you have no movement. It does make a difference, and you know, I can't say for everybody, but for me, it worked perfectly, and I'm still using it. I religiously use it, and it really makes a difference. So, but it does make a difference. I still have the, you know, if you look at my right side was affected. I had a hemorrhagic stroke, like Ella. And first of all, Ella, very inspiring story that you had at your age to have that. I was 49 years old, and then I'm right now 15 years old. 50 years old, 59 years old. Okay, I had a stroke, so I have a little brain issue.
No, you're good.
Yeah, but you know, I don't let anything bother me. I mean, you mentioned about the emotional part of stroke, and that, you know, I understand most people have PTSD and of stroke in a certain way, but for me, I have those emotional parts of it, but I work hard at everything. And you also mentioned, I think it was David, Ella, the caregiver. They don't get enough credit. I've been married coming up on 38 years, and I had my stroke 10 years ago, and finding out now, I mean, 10 years ago, I'm still finding out things about my stroke and what they go through, the caregivers, the family. It's hard on them. You know, we don't give them enough credit. And for me, you know, my wife knows I have, no one could see it, but my hand mentor, well, you saw my hand mentor, but the screen's right here. And when you start using it, you'll see that it's like it's a competition, because there's some people that are very younger than me, some people are older, and they're ahead of me. That's a tough thing to deal with. So, but it's great. This is a great technology that David and his group have done this. So if I can recommend, do this. Even if you don't think it's going to work, I've had people that have referred that have done like 10, 15 years out. I don't have no movement. Just try it. What do you have to lose? I mean, there's a lot of tricks in the tool bag there. You've got to try everything. Don't give up. But for me, I mean, I'm so happy I can move this. I mean, my hand is moving. So thank you.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you for putting your time in to doing your rehab and having, continuing that commitment. Certainly, putting all the hours that you put into using the hand mentor. certainly you get a lot of credit for that as well, I think. And for all the stroke survivors out there that, and those with neurological injuries, putting in the time to do the rehab. We know it's difficult. We know it's time consuming and oftentimes can be painful, but certainly, that's how you get the gains. You have to put in your hours to get the gains. You have to get the practice. We have to retrain. We have to retrain our brain in order to get the neuroplasticity to regain the function. So no, thank you.
Those wins, those small wins, I celebrate every single day. And my screen's a little small here, but I see someone's asking a question. That I know somebody asked me earlier, with a weak arm, how do I put the hand mentor on with kind of, I don't want to say it, but just one arm? And it's really,
maybe you can show us, Jerry.
If anybody can see the hand mentor here, I'm trying to show you, but mine, I put my hand, but with me, my fingers stick up. And if you can see that, but then when I do that, the first thing I do for me is grab the straps on near the forearm. I put that on, and then I don't know if anybody can see this. I strap these straps inside the, what's it called here? I'm so lame on the what it's really called, but I put this on, and then can you see this?
Finger pad, the finger pad. That's right. Pad. No, and great job with the camera work there, Jerry. I know it's very difficult to see both you and the handboard, but no, thank you for showing that to us. I know that oftentimes we have guests that come on and they have their hand mentors, but it's oftentimes out of frame with the camera. Thank you for making the extra effort to.
My pleasure. When I put that on, and it's hard because I don't know if everybody has it. I have subluxation, so the shoulder kinds of, people say it comes out of its socket. I feel it does, but not a lot. So then I put this one on here, then I'm ready to go. And then I can do this. Then I can use the games and start working on it.
Yes.
Everybody, this is amazing what I use. At first I had the worst pain because of my tone and because I didn't use it as much, because I didn't use my hand as much as my wrist. But within about a week, I was raring to go. So
okay, yeah. So that's actually, we have a great question from Dawn here in the comments. Jerry, how long did it take for you to get some wrist extension? Did it just start one day, or was it kind of a gradual, slow progression for you to get some of that wrist extension?
Yeah, it was
that you showed off to us earlier.
Yeah, it was gradual, but for me, it was, I work on it all the time. I really tried before this using the hand mentor. I always try to use my hand to shake somebody's hand, and all the time. I was very religious at this. So then about a week and a half, I could see some movement. And I'm telling you, when you start to see some movement, I'm gonna go crazy at this. Middle of the night, I'm starting to, my wife was, thinking, why are you still in your office, like rapping on this thing? But it worked. A week and a half, and as time went on, after 5 months or 4 months, you saw what I showed. This stuff works. This neuroplasticity, you're rewiring your brain. This is really the real deal. I don't know what I've done, because my tendons in my hand, when I lifted it up, I don't know if anybody saw it. It's kind of like this, because I kept cranking on it. Yeah, I kept cranking on my wrist, thinking, okay, this would work. Then I found out I did the wrong thing. So if I had the hand mentor prior to me trying to try anything else, I think I would have been perfect.
Well, that's certainly. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for that, and certainly an inspiration. You're about 10 years, 10 years after your stroke, and a lot of people say, we hear from a lot of clinicians and users. Oh, people tell me, 3 months after my injury, you basically make all of the recovery that you'll ever make. And, talking to the stroke survivors, seeing the stroke survivors that we work with, that's just not true. You could be 6 months, 9 months, a year, 5 years, and 10 years in your case, and longer, 15 years after your injury. And if you work at rehab, you can still make gains. It's not something that the brain just shuts off learning. Our brains can always learn. We really have to put in the time. And it's so fantastic to see, Jerry, that, after 9-10 years after your injury, that, you were initially, it was difficult for you to bring your hand into extension. And then now today, all of that movement that you have now in your hand, that's incredibly inspiring, I think, for us and our team as well at Motus Nova to see that. And really, it's stories like yours and those that, all of those stories from our users that really keep us going and keep us motivated and pushing to make the hand mentor, the foot mentor better, so that we can help you and all of our users. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure. And the thing is, I've done, after 10 years, I've been told many times, many times, that oh, I plateaued. I've heard that from so many stroke stars that I've talked to. I've talked to a ton, and they said they're very isolated. They feel like, what, I'm not going to get any better. But if you can encourage them and tell them, 10 years. Some people say after a year, nothing I can do. I've been discharged from the hospital. I'm going to sit on the couch. I can't go to work because I was fired from my job, but you can actually get a lot better just working at it. Like you said, David, work at your rehab all the time. And I do. I'm not going to sit around. I got 10 grandchildren. I'm not going to sit around and just let them just play by themselves, because I want to be involved with them. I may walk like a penguin, a little limping all around, but so what? I still work on, I just got 10 years. I just got to my 3-mile walk. I walked 3 miles.
Congratulations.
That was, for me, I'm still celebrating after a week ago I did that. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of that. But for the hand mentor, I use it all the time. And I'm telling you, I can't wait to do the assessment to show from the last assessment that I did to see how far I came. And I bet it's a lot better.
I know we'll have you on, I think on Monday, yes. If that's correct, with Dr. Nick Housley. We'll do an assessment with you, and we'll have to find out. We'll have to put you to the test, and we'll have to see how much more range of motion you have, having been working at this rehab, and that will be fantastic to see.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but my subluxation, I don't know why, but it's been better using that. My tone's been better because I've had a lot of tone. I have been getting Botox every 3 months because of the tone of my arm, my legs, my shoulder, my lats, all that stuff. But I haven't had it in probably 6-7 months, and I don't need it right now because of the hand mentor.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and Botox, kind of similar to the baclofen pump in the sense that we use it to reduce some of that tone, some of those muscle spasms, and among other tools in the toolbox, Botox. Right. Sometimes people get tendon surgery, and certainly, depending on the situation. But the best thing we can do, of course, is get you more movement. So that you don't have to go in for that Botox, so that you can move your hand and not just have it kind of in a contracted kind of state. So that's incredibly inspiring, Jerry, to see. And we thank you for putting in the time and the effort and to continuing your rehab. And it sounds, in the comments here we see a lot of support for cheering you on and for you to keep going. And your spirit is certainly an inspiration, I think, to us and to everyone that's watching. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
I mean, my story goes on for a long time. I can tell you so many things, but I do want to say because Ella has really touched on the emotional part of it. I mean, but it's funny if you just sit there and not do anything. So I don't want to be preaching, but the hand mentor, I use it a lot. If I sit there and do it, it keeps me busy and not sitting there sulking like, wow, I can't say the probably word, but this sucks. But that having a stroke is not for the weak. And but you know what? Using the hand mentor, hey, it's one thing better that I'm getting used to. I mean, increasing my mobility. And so that helps. And me walking, all those little things that you do, they may be little tiny gains, but you know what? You got to celebrate them. So me doing that hand mentor, when I finally start seeing some celebration on that, I mean, almost want to sleep with it. Sorry, but I but it's a great unit. I'm just kind of touting in it, but anyway.
We're so happy that it's been helpful in you and your journey. And certainly yours. I think you're still the star of the show. You're the driving force behind it, and we we're just here to kind of support you in your recovery journey and doing what we can to help you get the rehab that you need. And I see that you're sporting the 30-hour challenge shirt. I'm going to turn it around here.
Maybe I mean, I love that shirt. Off on camera. I know. I can't turn around. I can't turn around because I have the hand mentor still on. But yeah, it's here and there it is.
We'll be sure that those will be coming out to all of our users that have completed the 30-hour challenge. So be sure to look out for an email. We need your t-shirt sizes and a place to send your shirts. But for everyone that's been able to complete the 30-hour challenge, that's 30 hours of rehab in 30 days, or getting an hour of rehab a day. We have our t-shirts to recognize that, and certainly we'll be sending out more swag to recognize both our 100-hour challenge users and our 200-hour challenge users as well. So please be on the lookout for that. Very good. And I think that we're closing up on the hour here. I want to thank you everyone that joined us so much for spending this hour with us doing our Rehab Power Hour. Hopefully we were able to help answer some questions. We were hear some inspiring stories and really motivate everyone to keep doing your rehab. As always, if you have additional questions, I'm sorry if we couldn't get to them. Please email them to rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com, and as well as you can call us at 404-594-4244. And then I think that both Jerry and Ella, you guys, maybe we'll go with Ella first. You also do a show. Is that right, Ella? Where can people find you? Oh, you might be muted, Ella.
Sorry. Thank you. You guys caught me taking some pictures of the screen there and sharing it on my Instagram, which is where everyone can find me. So my Instagram is my name, Ella Sofia, which you see on the screen there. But there's 3 S's. Don't forget the 3 S's. Ella Sofia was sadly taken. Otherwise, you can also head over to my YouTube channel or my website, which is retrainyourbrain.ca, not .com. .ca, and if you go there first, you can also just find the links to all of my other social media from my website.
It's certainly an incredibly inspiring story. Thank you for sharing today, Ella. And if you want to, for all our viewers, if you want to see more, please follow Ella on Instagram and also go to retrainyourbrain.ca to see her show and hear more about both her recovery journey and get some tips on how to retrain your brain. Very good. And Jerry, I believe if, such an inspiring story to hear from you as well. If we want to hear more, where can we go?
Yeah, and I appreciate it. My show, I have a show on Tuesday and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Central Time. It's called Let's Talk Stroke. You can find it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and believe it or not, Twitch and LinkedIn. So they're on there and they all go at the same time. So please tune into them. There's amazing, inspiring stories of stroke survivors or professionals, like David and Dr. Housley. They were on, and it was very inspiring. So please tune into it. Tomorrow's the next day. So Thank you so much, David. And Ella, as usual, great hearing your story because I've never heard it like that. So thank you.
Very good. And we'll be sure to post, all these links as well in both the description and the comments here so that everyone can find Ella and Jerry. And again, my name is David, signing off. And thank you for joining us for Rehab Power Hour. Our next session is Friday at 7 p.m. We're going to have Dr. Nick Housley back as well with us, and we'll be able to do some assessments. And if this episode was helpful, please hit the like and share. It really does help us, and it keeps the show going. And again, this is David signing off. Remember, more rehab and equals more recovery. Thank you.